Alright, so we've been looking at equation 1, substituting it into equation 2, and we isolate for v final to get equation 3, we isolate for v initial to get equation 4, but we haven't isolated for the change in time. So from equation 1, we're going to isolate for the change in time. What would that look like? V final minus v initial equals to a delta t. Divide both sides by a, which is v final minus v initial over a equals to delta t. So that what do we do here? We divided both sides by the coefficient of delta t, which was a. So we divided both sides by a. Now this is not an equation, it's just another version of 1, so let's call it 1 prime. And we're going to substitute in 1 prime into equation 2. Because here from 1 prime we have delta t, and from equation 2 we have delta t, so we can replace it. That's what we're going to be doing next. Sub 1 prime into 2. So from 2 you have delta d equals 2 v initial plus v final over 2, and instead of the change in time we can now replace it by v final minus v initial over a. Now let's let the algebra game begin. This is going to be exciting. Okay, so our goal is to get a beautiful equation. This looks pretty nice already because you can interpret them in terms of like happy face, sad face, and so on, but we're going to get a more beautiful form of this. It requires some algebra tricks. What we're going to do, we're going to multiply both sides of the equation by the denominators, which is 2a. So we're going to multiply both sides of the equation by 2a, because what we do to one side, we must do to the other. And we do this, so from the right side, we could cancel out those terms. So let's simplify it now. 2a delta d equals to v initial plus v final in brackets times v final minus v initial in brackets. Now there's an equation that's going to come out of nowhere, or you have to think of something earlier in math that you study, and I'm going to try to give you a hint. So let's think about this in general, so as a mathematical aside. Recall that if you have a plus b times a minus b, or the way it's more commonly written is a plus b times a minus b in lowercase, this is the same thing as the difference of squares. A squared minus b squared. So we're going to be using the difference of squares to rearrange this equation into a much more beautiful form. So the right side will be v final square minus v initial square. And the left side remains the same, 2a delta d. Let's flip our equal term. So v final square minus v initial square equals to 2a delta d. And that's as beautiful as this equation can get. So this is the fifth equation of motion. Number 5. Feels good to write that. Look how beautiful that is. So now we have all 5 kinematic equations of motion, and we're going to try to look at a way to remember them in a much easier way, interpret them to bring some meaning, and even look at alchemy.